Algernon Charles Swinburne. In a review of Charles Baudelaire's Les Fleurs du Mal, 1857, Algernon Charles Swinburne remarks that the mass of readers seem actually to think that a poem is the better for containing a moral lesson. He goes on to praise the courage and sense of a man who acts on the conviction that the art of poetry has nothing to do with didactic matter at all. Certainly Swinburne's poems are not didactic in the sense of containing traditional moral values. As John Morley commented while reviewing Swinburne's first volume of poems, he is so firmly and avowedly fixed in an attitude of revolt against the current notions of decency and dignity and social duty, that to beg of him to be a little more decent, to fly a little less persistently and gleefully to the animal side of human nature, is simply to beg him to be something different from Mr. Swinburne. Swinburne set about shocking his elders by a variety of rebellious gestures. In religion he appeared to be a pagan, in politics a liberal republican, dedicated to the overthrow of established governments. On the subjects of love and sex, he was similarly unconventional, frequently preoccupied with the pleasures of the lover who inflicts or accepts pain, particularly with the excitement of flagellation. Swinburne also often turns in his poetry to the theme of homoerotic desire, a taboo topic for his Victorian audience. As Arnold Bennett said of Anactoria, 1866, a dramatic monologue in which the poet Sappho addresses a woman with whom she is madly in love, Swinburne played a rare trick on England by enshrining in the topmost heights of its literature a lovely poem that cannot be discussed. To a more limited extent, Swinburne also expressed his rebellion against established codes by his personal behavior. He came from a distinguished family and attended Eton and Oxford, but sought the company of the Bohemians of Paris and of London, where he became temporarily associated with Dante Gabriel Rossetti and other Pre-Raphaelites. By 1879, his alcoholism had profoundly affected his frail physique, and he was obliged to put himself into the protective custody of a friend, Theodore Watts Dunton, who took him to the countryside and kept him alive, although sobered and tamed. Swinburne continued to write voluminously and sometimes memorably, but his most fascinating poetry appeared in his early publications. He described his early play, Atalanta and Calydon, 1865, as pure Greek, and his command of classical allusions here, as well as in other poems, is indeed impressive. Yet the kind of spirit that he found in Greek literature was not the traditional quality of classic serenity admired by Matthew Arnold. Like Percy Bysshe Shelley, the poet he most closely resembles, Swinburne loved Greece as a land of liberty, in which men had expressed themselves with the fewest restraints. To call such an ardently romantic poet classical requires a series of qualifying clauses that makes the term meaningless. In his play and in the volume that followed it, Poems and Ballads, 1866, Swinburne demonstrated a metrical virtuosity that dazzled his early readers and is still dazzling. Those who demand that poetry should make sense, first and foremost, may find that much of his poetry is not to their taste. What he offers instead are heady rhythmical patterns in which words are relished as much for their sound as for their sense. There lived a singer in France of old by the tideless dolorous midland sea. In a land of sand and ruin and gold, here shone one woman, and none but she. These lines from The Triumph of Time have often been cited to illustrate Swinburne's qualities. Like some poems of the later French symbolists, such passages defy traditional kinds of critical analysis, and oblige us to reconsider the variety of ways in which poetry may achieve its effects. Another noteworthy aspect of these poems is their recurring preoccupation with death, as in the memorable recreations of Proserpina's underworld garden, frozen in timelessness. And as the critic Jerome McGann notes, no English poet has composed more elegies than Swinburne. The death of any prominent figure, such as Robert Browning, almost always prompted Swinburne to compose a poem for the occasion. Ave Atec Vale, 1868, his farewell to Baudelaire, is an especially moving tribute and shows Swinburne focusing on a subject extremely close to his heart. For Swinburne, the work of his beloved French poet possessed a languid, lurid beauty. To us, the phrase may seem equally applicable to Swinburne's poetry.